1 minute and 5 seconds. That is how long it took for the strangest match just outside the box and hit it. Long range, hard. The goalkeeper did not move in time. The fastest goal of this tournament. Paraguay 1, Turkey 0, 64 seconds played. The fans at San Francisco Bay Area Stadium had barely settled into their seats. What nobody in that stadium could have predicted was that the afternoon was only just beginning to get weird. Today, we are covering exactly what happened in Paraguay's 1-0 win over Turkey. Two moments that made this one of the most unusual matches in recent World Cup history, what they reveal about the new rules governing this tournament, and why a match that almost nobody predicted would matter ended up mattering quite a lot. Let's start with the watch, because it deserves its own explanation. Deep into the first half, with tensions running high after a hard foul, referee Ivan Barton moved in to separate both sets of players. In the physical shuffle of pulling teams apart, exactly the kind of scene referees have managed hundreds of times on international pitches, Barton's watch came loose from his wrist and fell to the ground. Galarza picked it up. Instead of simply handing it back, he put it on his own wrist, and then kept playing. The cameras captured everything. A World Cup goal scorer wearing the referee's watch, walking around an international football pitch during a live match. He wore it for several minutes before returning it. No yellow card, no formal action. Just one of the most genuinely bizarre individual moments a World Cup match has produced in years. Former German referee Knut Kircher, working as an analyst for German broadcaster Magenta TV, was asked to explain it on air. He struggled. What is happening with this player? Was approximately the level of clarity he managed. Nobody who has followed the story has suggested Galarza intended anything malicious. Every account reads the same way, an impulsive, almost childish instinct. Something fell, he picked it up, put it on, kept playing, forgot about it, eventually returned it without further incident. But the image of it. A footballer wearing a referee's personal property during a World Cup match. Consider how many things could have gone wrong in a different version of the same story. If Barton had needed the watch urgently for any reason, there was no procedure for that. If it had been damaged or lost, there was no precedent to follow. None of those things happened. But the fact that commentators, former referees, and football writers around the world spent genuine broadcast and column time working through the scenario tells you something real about how detailed football's rule book actually is, and how much of human behavior on a pitch it still has not thought to anticipate. This kind of moment, captured and shared globally within minutes, probably happens more often than anyone realizes in lower-profile matches, where far fewer cameras are pointed at every square meter of the pitch. The infrastructure of a World Cup broadcast makes it visible in ways that a domestic league game simply would not. Now the Almiron incident, because this is where the afternoon stopped being strange and started being historic. 3rd minute of first-half stoppage time. Paraguay still leading 1-0. A foul near the center circle triggered another heated exchange between players. Almiron and Turkey right back Mert Mulder ended up face-to-face, words being exchanged at close range. Almiron covered his mouth with his hand while speaking. Mulder immediately turned to referee Barton and appealed. Barton went to video review. Within seconds, he came back and showed Almiron a straight red card. Miguel Almiron became the first player in World Cup history to be sent off specifically for covering his mouth during a confrontation. The rule that produced that moment is new. It was introduced by the International Football Association Board in April 2026, specifically ahead of this tournament, and it was introduced with a direct origin story that FIFA has not been shy about telling. In a Champions League match earlier this year, Benfica forward Gianluca Prestiani covered his mouth while directing words at Real Madrid's Vinicius Jr. The accusation was that covering the mouth was being used to shield racist abuse from lip readers, cameras, and disciplinary review. FIFA President Gianni Infantino pushed for a rule that would make the gesture itself punishable, removing the need to prove what was actually said. Under the new law, covering your mouth during a confrontation is sufficient for an automatic red card. Intent does not need to be established. Content does not need to be proven. Paraguay coach Gustavo Alfaro put it plainly after the match. According to the law, if you cover your mouth, you're sent off. Red card. There's nothing I can do about that. He added something else worth noting. I fear we are too strict and football loses its essence. In football, there's frictions, fights, clashes. The reasonable case for this rule is not difficult to make. Football has needed a mechanism to address racist abuse on the pitch for years. The mouth-covering gesture was being used specifically to defeat the technological tools, cameras, lip readers, disciplinary panels, that were meant to make accountability possible. A rule that removes the intent question entirely and treats the gesture as the infraction creates a clean, enforceable standard that referees can apply consistently without requiring them to determine what was actually said in the middle of a match. Infantino made this case directly when explaining the rule's origin. If a player covers their mouth and makes racist or abusive comments to an opponent, the only way they can currently be removed from the game is if the content can be proven. This rule makes the action itself sufficient. It is a defensible position, but what happened to Almiron is the collision between that clean standard and the reality of what players actually do on a football pitch. Almiron was not accused of saying anything specific. There is no suggestion in any account of the incident that what he said to Mulder went beyond the ordinary heated exchange that happens dozens of times in every match at this level. He covered his mouth. The rule does not ask why. It does not ask what was said. It applies the maximum available sanction the moment the gesture occurs. Paraguay's coach was asked whether Almiron's action was an old habit, not a deliberate attempt to conceal anything specific. His response was essentially yes. The player knew the rule. He made the gesture anyway, not because he was trying to hide something in the way the rule was designed to address, because it is a gesture that has existed on football pitches for decades and is wired into players at a level that explicit rule knowledge does not always override in the heat of a confrontation. The rule was built to handle the worst version of that gesture. On its first major application at a World Cup, it caught a version that may have been something considerably more ordinary. Paraguay finished the match with 10 men. Turkey, with a full side, needed to score once in 45 minutes against a 10-man opponent to avoid elimination. They did not. Paraguay's defense held. Galarza's 64-second goal proved decisive. Turkey was eliminated from the 2026 World Cup, having never found an equalizer against 10 men. A squad that many analysts had identified as capable of a genuine run through the knockout rounds went home after a group stage exit shaped by one of the most unusual 45 minutes a World Cup match has produced in years. Turkey's campaign ended not with a tactical defeat, but with a watch on a goal scorer's wrist and a red card for a hand gesture. Here is what this match actually reveals about the 2026 World Cup beyond the individual moments. The watch story is, in the end, an entertaining human anomaly. Galarza did something genuinely inexplicable for a few minutes and then returned the object in question. No meaningful harm resulted. It is the kind of moment that exists in football precisely because football is played by human beings making real-time decisions in high-pressure environments. And sometimes those decisions are simply strange. The Almiron red card is a different category of story entirely. It is the first major collision between a rule designed with a specific and serious purpose and the full range of human behavior that the rule now governs. That collision was always going to happen. The question was when and what it would look like when it did. On Friday in San Francisco, it looked like a player covering his mouth out of instinct during a routine argument and being sent off for it in the third minute of stoppage time before halftime of a match his team needed to win. The rule's defenders will say the outcome was correct under the law as written. And they are right. Every account of what happened confirms that Almiron did exactly what the rule prohibits. The rules critics will say that the outcome illustrates the difference between legislation that addresses a genuine problem and legislation whose application, in practice, catches a much wider range of behavior than the problem it was designed to solve. Both things can be true at the same time. What the Paraguay-Turkey match made visible, in a way that a lower-stakes game would not have, is that this rule is now active at the world's biggest football tournament. Every player on every remaining squad has now seen exactly how it is applied. The first example has been set Whether it is the right example is a question worth staying with. Drop a comment below. Do you think Almiron's red card was the right call? Should the rule apply regardless of what was actually said? And what do you make of Galarza in the watch? Funniest moment of the tournament. So far, or something else? Every comment gets read. Everyone subscribe now and hit the notification bell if you want to follow every development from this World Cup. The rules, the results, and the moments that exist somewhere between the two. See you in the next one.